Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima and I'm here checking out Tachyon Project, which is a new twin-stick shooter from... You know, I really need to remember the names of these devs, but nevertheless, anyway, here's Tachyon Project. So, this game costs about, what was it, 10 bucks on the PlayStation Store, and you get a PS4 version with it. No cross-save or cross-play or anything that I can see. I think the PS4 version also has multiplayer, but this version apparently doesn't, in no sense of the word. Oh well, we'll go have a look at the options anyway. Just music and sound effects. Not too much out of the ordinary. We've also got an extras menu which has our tutorial, our ability to reset our save data, our cutscenes, and our stats. So you can see my stats here, most of them anyway. I got a massively high score on World 5 for some reason. I don't know what I did there that went so well. Anyway, let's go to the story mode first of all. The story mode is the main mode of the game and there's 10 levels in it. I gotta stop lip smacking, I'm so sorry. So you've got 10 levels and then you've got a story plus mode which has 10 more levels. Or at least I imagine that's sort of like a go through the story again sort of thing. But anyway. We'll hit up level 6, and the first thing we can do is that we can have a look at the leaderboard, but I don't think there'd be anybody on here yet. I checked the leaderboard of the first couple of story levels, and I didn't see anything. Might have been just my internet glitching. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, as you can see here, we've got leaderboards. And we've also got the ability to configure our ship. So, as you go through the story mode, you'll do things like you'll unlock new weapons. So, for example, I'm on the missiles right now, which I really don't like, honestly, so I'm probably going to go back to just the standard shot. But you've got plenty of different weapons here, and see, finish level 8, finish level 10. Achieve an accumulated score of 1 million, I guess? Yeah, whatever, 1 million, 10 million, doesn't really matter that much. So, you can unlock different weapons, and you've also got 2 special weapons. And they're on both the shoulder buttons, so... I've currently got the defense drone unlocked and the freezing bomb, the proximity mine, and the explosion, but I've just mainly been using the explosion. You can also slow down time, turn on a shield, put out a decoy, have a defense drone. So there's some neat stuff here, and you've also got 2 different perks that you can use. So they're pretty much what you would expect. You can move faster, shoot with more damage, have your bullets be heat-seeking or knockback, which is pretty interesting. I just keep the 2 extra damages around, but you know, there is a fair amount of customizability if you're not a fan of what the game gives you by default. So, this is actually a pretty decent ship, so we'll just go on with this to the story mission. Now, there is a story here. You are basically a sentient AI. Oh yeah, stealth mode, great. So, you are basically a sentient AI that's been released by its creators into the world, and you're basically trying to find them. It's easy enough to understand. The game itself doesn't really lend itself to this premise, but I mean, you know, suspension of disbelief, I think the word is for it. You know, you gotta accept some things in order for the game to work properly. But anyway, we've actually been dropped directly into a stealth level, which isn't the main form of gameplay that the game takes on, so it's a little strange, but I'll get around to explaining what's here anyway. So, the game is a typical twin-stick shooter. Have you played Geometry Wars? Well, you basically get how the game works here. You've got 2 sticks to work with, obviously. The left one moves, the right one shoots. You can also use the L and R buttons to activate your special weapons. So I activated both of my defense... Oh, God damn it. I activated both my defense drone and my bomb there. And these can only be used after a certain cooldown, and you can see the cooldown down the bottom of the screen there. Top middle of the screen's your life. Tutorial doesn't tell you this. I mean, it's pretty obvious after you play a mission or 2, but it's weird that the tutorial doesn't feel the need to mention that this is your time, that this is your life, and getting hit makes it go down, and also you will run out of time slowly as the game goes on. You also have a multiplier up in the top right. It works about the same way as it does in Geometry Wars and similar games, where the more enemies you kill, the more it goes up. And you collect those little things that they drop. Like, I was going to call them geoms, but they're probably not called gems. They're probably just called data or something. What's the word I'm looking for? Vanilla like that? Generic. And you end up you end up getting hit a lot in this game, which is kind of annoying, but thankfully, you don't have to collect the gems themselves to increase the multiplier, you just have to kill the enemies. And killing things with your bomb or your special weapons or anything like that actually counts towards the multiplier, which is quite nice. And up in the top left, you can see your progress on your waves, and you can see the amount of time left until you finish the wave. Like, you have to kill a specific amount of enemies, or you have to last for X amount of seconds, or you have to do something like that. Might as well explain what the stealth mode is. This stealth mode is a little strange. The idea basically is that your previous position is represented by that little icon there. And you have to try and, you have to try and avoid detection. You're not going to, because as soon as you fire, you're lit up like a Christmas tree to anyone who wants to come and basically destroy you. So you have to be constantly on the move to try and avoid damage, because the main enemy of the stealth mode will immediately come in and try and destroy you. But there's also enemies that can detect you in one way or another and let everyone know about where you're going. The majority of the stages in this game are a regular mode, though, where everybody knows where you are and will move towards you. Or there are some enemies that don't, you know. It's the same sort of deal with Geometry Wars. Some move towards you, some move in irregular patterns, yada 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 yada. So I've been playing this for about an hour, and I've been through about half of the story mode. So this is level 6 of the story mode. I have seen a bunch of different enemies. They introduce new enemies with every stage, and judging by the fact that I went and played challenges for a little bit afterwards, there's a lot more enemies to be introduced, and there are boss enemies as well. So what's the word I'm looking for? Like, on stage 5, there was a big boss monster thing, which I'll go back and play stage 5 for the purpose of demonstration of the boss monster, and then we'll go play some challenges, because the challenges are actually quite useful for demonstrating later game loadouts. But yeah, this stealth mode's actually relatively unique, and I quite like it. It's just kind of annoying that there are so many enemies that'll spawn in that absolutely positively screw you by revealing your location to pretty much everything on the map. The game is actually kind of overwhelming, like, all the time. There are enemies moving at you constantly, and there's always, like, something out of screen that'll be half tempted to kill you. Like, nothing shoots at you, which is a nice change, but you've got enemies everywhere, and there are all sorts of different kinds. There are ones that can only be attacked from behind, there are ones that come straight at you, there are ones that tend to avoid your position. It's just, there are a ton of different enemies, and it's really hard to keep your multiplier up because they come at you from every which way, and they've got all sorts of ways just to confuse you and hurt you, and it's just, it can get really frustrating trying to fight them off sometimes. It's not the game's fault. I mean, the game's design is relatively, I mean, it's fair, I'll put it that way. It is relatively fair. It can just get really overwhelming really quickly, especially when you've got so many enemies on the screen at once. It just feels massively overwhelming. I mean, thankfully it's not like Geometry Wars where one hit will kill you, and you can actually take a lot of hits, but you do lose your multiplier, and getting a high score requires that you keep your multiplier as high as possible for as long as possible. So getting a high score might definitely be one of the most frustrating things in the world, that's for sure. That's a time mine. I hate these mines. The enemies also do tend to have a little bit of a problem with spawning. They tend to spawn right on top of you. Well, not so much right on top of you. They have fixed positions to spawn in, but you don't know where these positions are, and they are capable of hurting you the exact millisecond they spawn in. So if you're on top of an enemy when he spawns, you're screwed. Like, you're done. That's it. You've just taken a hit. You've lost your multiplier. That can be a little bit frustrating, honestly, because it's kind of hard to tell where the enemies are going to spawn. Like, there are clown car spawn points, more or less, where they'll tend to just stream from constantly, and you can generally avoid those sorts of areas, but still, there is sometimes where it just doesn't happen, and it's frustrating when you just end up getting absolutely screwed by the enemy spawn point. Not to mention, it's a bit of a pain in the ass to use the invisibility of the stealth mode to your advantage, because you end up having to kill everything anyway to keep your multiplier going, but I digress. The game itself does remain interesting though. I do have a problem with the backgrounds not changing, honestly. I mean, there used to be a problem with seeing stuff, and in the dark it's a little bit worse than it usually is, but I mean, at the same time, it's not that big a deal. You get used to it after a bit, and the enemies are relatively well fleshed out. Could be a little better, could be a little worse. Maybe an option to turn down the background brightness would be great. My fault, I really wasn't paying attention there. But the game itself is relatively fine. Your bullets do have weight. You do actually have a fair bit of knockback, especially on the heavier weapons like the shotgun and the missiles. And you have a lot of options for dealing with enemies, as I showed off before in the customization screen. You can take along 2 perks, 2 special weapons, and a main weapon. So the game does have a little bit of variety and encouraging that you experiment with all different kinds of weapons. And it feels okay. Like, a lot of the enemies don't feel like they flinch too much underneath your bullets, but then again, I am playing with like massive damage bullets right now, so maybe it's just a maybe that's just a problem with the way that works. But the game itself is fine. I mean, it doesn't feel as polished as a game like Geometry Wars does, but at the same time, it is like relatively good at what it does. And there's a lot of variety in the enemy types. There's a ton of different enemy types. Like, they introduce like 3 or 4 every single story stage. And if you want to just dive right into the challenge mode, then you're more than welcome to do that. In fact, I'm probably going to go straight to the challenge mode. I won't show off the boss, but the boss is actually pretty simple. It's just got an impenetrable ring around it. Do enough damage, it gets a second and a third, and then it dies. It's not that big of a deal of a boss fight, but yeah. There's also these cutscenes that come up from time to time, and while I won't show one for the purpose of keeping the gameplay going in this footage, it's a relatively simple plot. You don't actually get that many cutscenes after the first couple of levels, which is a little weird, and it's not really that well written to begin with. It is kind of an excuse plot, more or less. So I'm not too annoyed by the fact that there's not that much of it. It definitely, like, what's the word I'm looking for? It definitely doesn't need to be worried about that much. It's not like it's relevant to the gameplay or anything, so, you know, just as an excuse, it works just fine. God, I hate these big red ones, because they spawn, they charge right at you, and they can do this from off screen, so if one comes charging at you and you've got nowhere to run, you're screwed. As I said, the game can be very overwhelming. Very overwhelming indeed. Good lord. Ow. You gotta remember to use your sub-weapons, because it's not like Geometry Wars again, or any other twin-stick shooter I've played in the past couple of years, where your sub-weapons are limited. They recharge very quickly, so they are very easy. Well, they're not very easy to use, but, you know, you're encouraged to use them quite heavily, because you can. Like, look, I've got like 3 defense drones around me right now. They just destroy anything that gets close. It's kind of nice. Might as well talk about the game's technical performance. The technical performance isn't actually that great, honestly. I mean, it runs alright most of the time. It's just strangely slow sometimes. I mean, the game activates like this weird slow motion thing from time to time, and it's completely unnecessary. And it just seems to come up at random. So I don't know why it insists on doing it. It's a little strange. And the game's performance, most of the time it's fine. It's just, god damn, did you see that? It is just a little bit insane at times, man. Come on. But yeah, it's surprisingly weird on its performance. Sometimes it feels like it drops, but sometimes it doesn't. But most of the time it still handles fine anyway, so it's not as big of a deal as I'm making out, honestly. Like, count down how much time it takes for me to get my bomb back after I use it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's basically 5 seconds. So yeah, you just use everything constantly. Like, hammer away. Like, if you want to have like a ton of like defense drones and stuff, you can literally just hammer away at the buttons if you wanted to. That would work pretty damn well if you were insistent on just going for, well, not so much high score, but just a game where you can mash buttons and try and have fun. Because the game is a fairly large graphical spectacle. It doesn't look as good as Geometry Wars, but still looks alright in its own regard. I know I'm comparing this game to Geometry Wars a lot, but I mean, Geometry Wars is the twin-stick shooter I go to for twin-stick shooters on my Vita. So, to not compare it to Geometry Wars would be foolish, because you're going up against Geometry Wars. But anyway, that was just an example of a story level. Now let's go back and have a quick look at the challenges, because this is where the main longevity of the game is going to come in. So every one of the challenges has an online leaderboard of its own, and these all have different, like, twists on the formula. So, Endless Challenge and Stealth Challenge, same thing. Endless Waves, just one with stealth and one without. I'll go with something that's not stealth this time. You've also got a limited time challenge, and killing enemies won't add time, so it's a time attack. Then you've got the Claustrophobia challenge, which is actually quite interesting, and I will show this off, only because I won't last very long in it, because I tried this before and I did terribly, so let's give this a shot. So here's how it works. See those 4 mines in the corner? They get slowly larger as time goes on, and you need to kill as many enemies as possible to keep them down. Minor nitpick, the snake enemies take a lot of damage and only give you as much as the regular cannon fodder. Really wish they would give you more than just the regular cannon fodder, honestly, but oh well. Minor nitpick. But yeah, this is actually quite an interesting challenge, because the chances of you dying during this, like, mode is very low unless the mines get to you, because they will eventually fill up the screen, and I do quite like the variety of this challenge. It reminds me a lot of, Ratchet Gladiator, or Ratchet Deadlocked, I think it was called in the United States. That game was probably my favorite game of that entire series on the, of the PlayStation 2. That game was a hell of a lot of fun in my personal opinion, but anyway. We're not talking about Ratchet Deadlocked here, we're talking about Tachyon Project, and I actually do like this mode. I'm doing a lot better at it than I was last time. The main trouble is that, considering that the game doesn't take up the entirety of the screen, you can't see off-screen enemies, so by the time that you end up noticing where an on-screen enemy is, that happens. So yeah, that's actually quite difficult mode. But we'll go back and we'll go play some of the extra ones. Like, so Extreme Stealth Challenge modifies how much time you get. Secondary weapons, you only use them. One-hit challenge, obvious. But now, let's do the Laser Loadout challenge, and then I'll do the Shotgun challenge, because it lets me demonstrate lots of other different kinds of stuff. So you get, that was the kit failing, not the game, I apologize. It's still failing, actually. I'm gonna guess that it doesn't like this background, which is not the best start. Not great, but anyway. I'll try and stick over here, because yeah, if I stick in this corner, it doesn't seem to affect the kit as much. This kit is really weirdly affected at the weirdest sorts of kinds of, stuff. But anyway, here's an example of some of the stuff you can use. So, we've got a decoy that the enemies will go for by default, and a defense drone. So the defense drone will have, the defense drone has, bullets. He'll defend you. Because he's a good little defense drone, isn't he? Yeah, there are all the enemies. I was wondering where they'd all come from. But yeah, plenty of different weapons, plenty of different types of things to go around, and there's a lot of challenges with a fair bit of variety too, so while I wouldn't call Tachyon Project anywhere near as good as, say, Geometry Wars or something like it, at the same time, I'm definitely not offended by its existence. It's relatively entertaining, it's got a lot of variety, and there's you know, it's a relatively good not first-person shooter, what the hell am I thinking? It's not a relatively good first-person shooter, it's a relatively good twin-stick. This laser is a pain in the ass, man, I tell ya. You do kind of have to keep a defense drone around for all of it. My fault, that was my bad. I'll go play the Shotgun challenge, and then we'll finish this video off. But yeah, here's the Shotgun challenge. So we've got a bunch of different things to work with here. So you've got a weapon that makes you a sub-weapon, I should say, that makes you fire stupid fast, but makes your recoil ridiculous. You just go flying all over the place, which is actually pretty neat. And the second one here is a proximity mine. So if anything touches that, they will get blown to shreds. So yeah, Game's got a good amount of variety. There's a lot of stuff to do in it. There's online leaderboards, which is good. Shame that there's no multiplayer, like cooperative, ad hoc, or online multiplayer. But, you know, not that big of a deal, I guess. And the game's relatively cheap. I'm pretty sure it's 10 bucks. If it's 10 bucks, it's probably worth at least a look. Because it's got a fair amount going for it. I might as well go check at the end of this video, because it did come out today. Ow. Boom shakalaka. Look at all those bullets, good lord. It's got a lot more to it than We Are Doomed, I have to say. We Are Doomed, you can see everything in that game in 5 minutes. This game, it actually takes a fair amount of time, so, yeah. I'll go check how much this is, actually. I should be able to get onto the store in this game, but... maybe not. Doesn't matter, I showed you enough gameplay. Oh wait, no, I won't be able to show you, because, yeah, I've already bought it, so... Well, I didn't buy it, I got a review code, but anyway. That was a look at Tachyon Project. Not bad. If you're looking for something that's a little different than Geometry Wars or any of the other twin-stick shooters around Vita at the moment, well worth your time. And, you know, it's probably relatively cheap as well. Like, I can't see them charging more than 10 bucks for that, but 10 bucks is still a pretty good price anyway. So, this has been Blue Maxima, and I'll see you all next time.